The Princess has got a bad reputation. By the time it featured as Terry Scott's suburban car in the ever so middle class, middle of the road Terry and June, it was seen as just another unreliable mistake from British Leyland. But the Princess was front-wheel drive, something large family cars flocked to in the 1980s after the Vauxhall Cavalier showed it was the way to go. It had a forward-thinking design, turning its back on boring three-box shapes like the Ford Cortina that launched just a year later. And it focused on a low-drag shape, just like the Citroën, to get the most power and fuel efficiency from the engine. But being produced by British Leyland in the 1970s, becoming successful was beyond even this car's reach, and almost as soon as it had launched, it was forgotten, and Ford's boxy Cortina went on to rule the roost. So just what went wrong? This is the Princess and Austin Ambassador story. When the British Motor Corporation, or BMC, launched their new large car, the Austin Morris 1800 in 1964, it was expected to be another Alec Izagonis triumph like the Mini and the 1100 before it. With good reviews from the press, BMC started gearing up to build 4,000 a week, but with an awkward driving position and styling that split opinion, sales were a disappointment. BMC was subsumed into Leyland Motors to form British Leyland, and it quickly became apparent BMC had been skimping on development. They had very little in the pipeline to replace their best-selling models. A replacement for the older 1100 was prioritised first, as it was the older model. The 1800 would have to limp along with poor sales until BL could fund a replacement. An internal report in 1970 projected growth in the large car market in the 1970s. I'm sure a lot of money was paid on the research, but their conclusions were pretty obvious to most casual observers. The new, larger Mark III Ford Cortina had just been launched and was quickly becoming Britain's favourite car. BL didn't have anything new to compete with it. The Morris Marina that was about to launch had been sized to compete with the older, smaller Cortina. So BL's design team started work on a successor to the 1800, or Land Crab as it had become known. BL had poached designer Roy Haynes from Ford, fresh from his work on the Mark II Cortina. He persuaded a young colleague, Harris Mann, to go with him, who'd worked on the Escort and the Capri. Roy didn't stick around long though. He didn't like the way things were done at BL and left after little more than a year. With Alec Izagonis off designing a successor to the Mini, this left Harris Mann as the influential new talent for the Austin and Morris brands. His saloon version of the Austin Xander caught the attention of BL's management, and they invited him to produce a design for the 1800 successor. Mann was in love with the wedge shape and its ability to produce something stunning, aerodynamic and practical. So his initial sketches for the new project, dubbed Diablo, the Spanish word for devil, would have a low nose and high rear end, inspired by Grand Prix cars. A three-box shape was entertained, but ultimately rejected. British Leyland should be known for exciting, forward-thinking designs. It may have been influenced by Pininfarina's rejected restyle of the 1800 in 1967, but even if it hadn't, British Leyland's management would surely have been aware of it, and it may have influenced their interest in a new radical design. The wedge shape contrasted with the rest of the car industry that had been chasing exotic American styles in pint-sized form. Harris Mann looked instead to the European continent and more avant-garde shapes that companies like Citroën were producing. Britain had a newfound fascination with European package holidays, and holidaymakers would see very different car styles on their summer trips, so it made sense to bring some of that exotic European style to suburbia, and with the UK likely to join the common market, that European styling would help sell the new car on the continent once it became cheaper to sell British cars abroad. By August, a full-scale clay mock-up was ready. The shape hadn't changed much from Mann's original sketches. Some of the awkward kinks were ironed out, such as the rear door, and by November the team had something they were happy with. The front would use large trapezoidal headlights, a departure from the simple round headlights used on many other cars. Alternate designs for the front were produced though, including some with round headlights. Today, an aerodynamic shape is created in a computer and checked in the wind tunnel. In the early 1970s, designers would create a design they thought was aerodynamic, and by the time it came to wind tunnel testing of scale models, there were only small changes that could be done to make it right. Harris Mann's original sketch proved to be quite aerodynamic, getting a drag factor of 0.4. That's nothing compared to the 0.34 the Citroën SM got, but a lot better than its competition. The windscreen wipers would be concealed by the bonnet line, and care was taken with the front end to make it as streamlined as possible. Surprisingly, given the shape, the car wasn't a hatchback, although it was considered as the car was developed, as well as an estate version. Hatchback cars hadn't sold particularly well in the UK, and there was no expectation this was going to change anytime soon. The official reason for making Diablo a saloon was BL felt only small cars worked well as hatchbacks, although this didn't make any sense, as when they said this, they were just a year away from launching the hatchback Rover SD1. It was also said British Leyland worried it would cannibalise sales from the similar Austin Maxi, also a large hatchback. There's no direct evidence for this, but it's likely that with the Maxi and SD1 being hatchbacks, BL felt that offering the Diablo as a saloon would give more variety for customers who weren't hatchback fans. That wouldn't stop enterprising coach builders like Crayford offering hatch conversions when it launched though. The wedge shape with its low nose had presumed a front-wheel drive layout. Although it was traditional and preferred by customers of larger cars to have rear-wheel drive, BMC had been using front-wheel drive on many of its cars since the 1959 Mini. BL thought that changing to rear-wheel drive would send the wrong message, like BMC had backed the wrong horse or something. And with the Landcrab also being front-wheel drive, the new chassis wouldn't be a million miles away from the old car, reducing the cost of development. The shape was designed to incorporate both the B-Series engine from the old Landcrab and the new E-Series engine that had the advantage of a 5-speed gearbox. A fifth gear was becoming increasingly popular as more people took to fast motorway driving. With the smaller Morris Marina being wrong-footed by the new, larger Ford Cortina, BL was intent the Diablo wouldn't make the same mistake, and the size was further increased, although it would still be shorter than European rivals such as the Peugeot 504 and Opel's Rekord. With the shape looking towards the continent, the suspension would follow the same pattern. BMC had fitted many of its cars with hydrolastic suspension, similar to the hydropneumatic suspension fitted to Citroëns. BMC was working on a new version called Hydrogas that would be fitted first to the upcoming Austin Allegro. Diablo would use the same system. The setup was made intentionally soft to give a smooth upmarket ride, and it was coupled with low-profile tyres, or what passed for low-profile tyres in the early 70s, to give a good balance of smoothness without roll. The new car would also be available with Dunlop De Novo run-flat tyres. The rather exciting, racy codename of Diablo was replaced by the humdrum AD071. As work progressed, there were concerns about fitting the E-Series engine. BL predicted existing Maxi and upcoming Allegro sales would use up all of their E-Series capacity, so AD071 would have to make do with the B-Series engine and miss out on that 5-speed gearbox. AD071 was launched as the Austin 1822 in February 1975. The striking design was immediately apparent, a new shape for the 1970s. Harris Mann must have been proud. His design had made it through with only minor changes, unlike the Austin Allegro, which was radically different from the original design and had been nicknamed the Flying Pig. The 18 part of 1822 was the 1800 4-cylinder engine version, and the 22 was the 6-cylinder 2200cc engine. An automatic gearbox was available with 1 and 2 manual override gears that, like many automatics, were rarely used, but British Leyland pitched it as giving optimal performance in first and second gears. In the 70s, luxury wasn't measured in the number of tech gadgets in the car, but whether the car had carpet flooring or adjustable seats. The 1822 seats not only adjusted forwards and backwards, but up and down as well. There was a light in the boot and under the bonnet. Not that British Leyland mechanicals or electrics would give drivers any trouble on dark nights, of course. The ultimate in 70s style, the top-of-the-range models were appointed with plush velour seats and wing mirrors on both sides of the car. It also got power-assisted steering, a lesson learnt after the old Landcrab's heavy steering had been criticised. These were touches rarely seen at the time. The marketing material also made a big deal about the optional laminated windscreen. Yes, a laminated windscreen was optional in the 1970s. The rear passengers kept warm using vents from under the front seats. Warning lights were illuminated from a single bulb using fibre optic cables at a time when fibre optic lamps were the latest fad. Another warning lamp told you if you needed to put your seatbelt on, and there was a sensor underneath the passenger seat to detect if someone was there, and so if the warning lamp needed to come on. This might all seem pretty fancy, but unless you got a top-of-the-range model, the radio was an optional extra. It's maybe unimaginable today that we used to drive around with no entertainment, just our thoughts for company. All this luxury was part of BL's plan for the future. Austin Morris and the Wolseley sub-brand, yes, that 1822 was also sold as a Wolseley, was going upmarket. According to Austin Morris's managing director, they were ceding the mass market to the competition, at least for larger cars, and was becoming a niche luxury player. The motoring journalists liked BL's new car, praising the handling and its ability to soak up the miles in comfort. As the marketing material would proclaim, it was the car that's got it all together. But what wasn't all together was British Leyland's finances. When British Leyland had been born in the late 1960s, 4 of every 10 cars sold in the UK came from their factory gates. By the mid-70s, it was less than 3 in 10. In 1974, BL had begged a £50 million loan from the government, but a mere £50 million, £530 million today, wasn't enough to save BL. In just 12 months, they burnt through all of that cash and declared bankruptcy. With no private investor willing to sink their money into a business with so many problems, and with massive layoffs projected in marginal seats, the ruling Labour government nationalised the whole shebang, one of a long list of industries and businesses nationalised in the 30 years since the Second World War, including coal, steel, gas, electricity, water, the railways, the Bank of England, medical services, telecommunications, the post office, the National Bus Company, and Rolls-Royce. In all this melee, BL was trying to sell their new Austin 1822. It was a bit like trying to sell umbrellas in a hurricane. It didn't help that production was delayed by trade union action. You knew I couldn't make a video about the 1970s British car and not mention them, could I? Even while production was ramping up ahead of the launch, the Cowley factory in Oxfordshire was hit with a 4-week strike. Ironically, the TV coverage of the strike blew the reveal of BL's new car. Maybe it was the excitement around the new car, maybe it was a desire to buy British and keep BL afloat. The marketing worked, and initial demand for the Austin Morris Wolseley 1822 was high, with dealers seeing overwhelming demand. One distributor reported customers were offering Peugeots, Citroëns and even BMWs in part exchange. All of these cars were considered more upmarket than the lowly Austin Morris brands and showed the well-appointed interior and striking design had struck a chord with the buying public. All BL had to do was produce thousands of well-put-together cars, and they had a hit on their hands. Yes, you know I'm going to talk about unions again. This would make a very good drinking game, wouldn't it? Drink every time I mention the unions in a British Leyland video. Just 2 months after the launch, the Cowley factory was at a standstill once more. This time workers downed tools in solidarity with Morris Marina workers who were being told that they needed to work a 4-day week because there wasn't enough demand. The next month there was a strike at tyre producer Dunlop, making it hard to drive completed cars off the production line. 2 months after that there was a strike at a component supplier, so production stopped once more. British industry was becoming a joke around the world, and it was making efficient car production almost impossible. Government ownership had forced a hard look into BL's finances. The result? The Ryder Report suggested an end to badge engineering and a merger of the separate Austin and Morris dealerships. The Austin, Morris and Wolseley marks would disappear from this new car and the old Princess mark would be revived. Maybe British Leyland were trying to hark back to happier times with a brand name that represented 1950s luxury, and maybe they could capitalise on the feeling that this car was a cut above the mass market Austin name. So, a new start for the desirable Princess, and a car that bankrupt BL could hopefully charge a premium for. But with ongoing strikes, there were no cars to sell. Customers would look at other domestic cars or increasingly foreign imports. My family was one of them, going from a Land Crab to an Audi 100 in 1976. And when customers switched, they found competitors' cars to be more reliable. And after that revelation, there was no going back. It didn't help that the Princess's poor reliability made national headlines, showing that underneath the exciting Continental lines, the Princess was old school, dodgy British Leyland. It didn't help that the company was on a financial diet, meaning any quality improvements had to be done on the cheap. Oh, and the Ryder Report had recommended that BL needed a new small car, so all funds were diverted to producing that. Quality would improve slowly, and good work was done to achieve that, but like school nicknames, once lumbered with a reputation, it's next to impossible to get rid of it. Never mind you were made captain of the school rugby team. If you fell over and got a concussion on your first day, you'll be known as Pavement Face until the day you leave. Those now optimistic sales projections vanished, and the Princess became just another car painted with the brush of British Leyland failure on the nightly news. Even sadder, the Rover SD1 would launch a year later and would follow the same pattern. Lauded by the press, long waiting lists and public excitement would give way to apathy once strike-induced waiting lists and poor quality made it a car to avoid. Vauxhall would start selling the well-made Opel Ascona as the Cavalier that soon outsold the Princess, and Ford updated their top-selling Cortina. One of the Princess's headline features when it launched, the fasten seatbelt warning light, seemed to symbolise the car's fate. It had seemed like such a good idea when it launched, but after 6 months of living with it, it was just plain annoying. The first update appeared in 1978 as the Princess 2. The original car had been criticised for its slow acceleration. The B-Series engine was updated to the O-Series, giving improved performance. The top-of-the-range 2.2-litre six-cylinder would be replaced by the E-Series engine, as sadly BL had spare capacity to use it in the Princess. The car still didn't get a fifth gear though, even though the E-Series engine could be fitted with a 5-speed gearbox. The 1.7-litre engine was more powerful than the old 1.8-litre and still fit into the 1.8-litre tax bracket. A new 2-litre engine was of course more powerful and snuck under Continental tax rules. But as for other updates, these were harder to spot. Entry-level models got more features, the aerial moved from the front to the rear, an ashtray made an appearance in the centre console, and the car got side indicator repeaters. Hardly groundbreaking changes. Motor critics, who had been full of praise just 3 years earlier, now decried the car for a lack of reliability and a lack of prestige. And maybe those avant-garde looks weren't forward-thinking, but actually a bit ugly. How times had changed. British Leyland would have more luck with the 1980 Austin Metro, and the focus was on repeating this success with a larger Maestro and Montego, the latter of which would eventually replace the Princess. That was 5 years away, which meant the Princess had to soldier on with minor updates like better seats and sound deadening. Or would it? The success of the Metro had the side effect of freeing up some money for an update. The design team went away to work out how to make this a car for the 1980s that could take on the Vauxhall Cavalier and the successor to Ford's mighty Cortina. First to bite the dust was the top-of-the-range E-Series engine. With Austin Maxi production ending, that engine was going the way of the Dodo, so this was more of a necessity. To make up for it, the smaller O-Series engine would get twin carburetors to give it a little bit more power. Dropping the larger E-Series engine meant the bonnet could be lower. This was integrated into the restyle along with Morris Ital headlights to give the front a new look. But the rear got the biggest change. Ever since the Princess had been launched, the public had been clamouring for a hatchback, something the car seemed destined to become given its shape. The world seemed to be moving to hatchbacks in 1980. Vauxhall's Cavalier had a hatchback, and Ford's successor to the Cortina, the Sierra, would as well. So that's what the Princess became. To accommodate this, the chassis needed a lot of changes around the back to keep it rigid. With all that front-end work, the design team changed almost all the body panels. At the same time, they spent time cleaning up the design to reduce the panel gaps and improve the fit and finish. Inside, there was a complete redesign. The dashboard was all new, as were the seats. The update would get new luxury features like electric front windows, a sunroof and power door locks. Some thought of reintroducing the car as a Wolseley to give it a nostalgia-fueled bump to sell it as a premium car now production issues had been solved. However, British Leyland, or Austin Rover as they'd become, had too many car brands as it was, so the decision was taken to make the car an Austin once more, but to give it a model name that suggested the Princess was still a little bit special. Say hello to
the Austin Ambassador. Why rich? Why rich? Why rich?
Calling their cars the Ambassador was maybe a little bit hopeful, giving the car a sheen of opulence it didn't seem to warrant. Ferrero Rocher would try something similar 10 years later, selling something you could buy at a local corner shop or petrol station as an unexpected treat at the Ambassador's reception.
Monsieur, où is Ferrero Rocher? You're really spoiling us.
Austin Rover had hopes of more than doubling the admittedly low sales of the Princess, but when they launched the new Austin Ambassador, the public's reaction was less than warm. The team had wanted to do a big styling update on the car to move it as far away from the Princess look as possible, but after all that work and money and changing almost all the body panels, it looked essentially the same. In fact, with the Morris Ital front and rear lights, they managed to turn a groundbreaking design into something, well, bland. You only had to look at the Mark IV Cortina to see how much of a styling update could be done without changing the chassis. The public wasn't falling for this Jedi mind trick. They wanted a hatchback, which they got, but they also wanted more power, and here was a car with a smaller engine, and it still didn't have a fifth gear that would give it extra pace. Features like a fifth gear were almost table stakes for a family-sized car in the 1980s, especially for the top-of-the-line model. Austin Rover seemed to have been investing their money in all the wrong areas, but maybe the designers were hampered by a limited budget, a limited selection of engines and gearboxes, and having to use hand-me-down lights from the Morris Ital, but surely there were more creative answers than what we got. But the most damning part of the Ambassador was its fit and finish, which despite specific work to remedy, seemed no better than the old car. And as drivers would find out over time, the interior quality was actually lower than the old Princess. Over time, Ambassador seats would break down faster than Princess seats. A saving grace was the suspension, a refinement of 20-year-old technology that still felt class-leading after continuous refinement. The Ambassador was always a stopgap solution until Austin Rover's saviour, the Montego, arrived. It never threatened the sales of the Cavalier or Ford's new Sierra that was selling about 10 times as many cars. The Ambassador's worldwide sales were hampered by the fact that, unlike the Princess, it was never made as a left-hand drive car. The Princess, like so many British Leyland cars, started off with such promise and ended in embarrassment. But it should be remembered for a design team that dared to push British Leyland to make a cutting-edge, class-leading car that hoped to take on Europe's finest. The Ambassador will be replaced by the Austin Montego, a car like the Maestro that hoped to follow up on the success of the Metro to bring Austin Rover back to prominence. To see how the Maestro and Montego fared, click on the video on the right. If you want to hear a bit more about the Princess, click the optional extra video. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.